The rain hammered against the massive windows of Miami International Airport as Sofia Martinez clutched her camera bag tighter to her chest. The storm had thrown the entire airport into chaos. With flights delayed and passengers scattered across every available seat, her flight to Barcelona was supposed to leave 2 hours ago, but the departure board kept showing one delay after another. Sofia was a travel photographer who had built her reputation capturing authentic moments in the world's most beautiful locations. At 28, she had already traveled to over 40 countries, her camera serving as both her companion and her ticket to adventure. This Barcelona assignment was particularly important, a luxury travel magazine had commissioned her to photograph the city's hidden architectural gems for their special edition. The announcement crackled through the terminal speakers, barely audible over the storm outside. Flight 847 to New York now boarding at Gate B12. All passengers please proceed to the gate immediately. Sofia looked at her boarding pass in confusion. Gate B12. That was her gate. But her flight was supposed to go to Barcelona, not New York. In her exhaustion and the chaos of the storm delays, she assumed they had changed her routing. Maybe she would connect through New York to get to Barcelona. Without giving it much thought, she gathered her belongings and hurried toward the gate. The mix-up first-class cabin was nearly empty, as Sofia found her seat too. According to her boarding pass, the leather seat was incredibly comfortable, far better than the economy seats she usually booked for her travels. She settled in with her camera equipment, grateful for the extra space and comfort after the stressful evening at the airport. As she organized her photography gear, flight attendant named Carlos approached with a warm smile. "Can I see your boarding pass, miss?" Sofia handed it over without looking up from her camera bag. She was checking her equipment, making sure everything had survived the rush through the airport. "Miss Martinez," Carlos said gently, "I think there might be some confusion. This boarding pass is for a different flight." Sofia's head snapped up, her dark eyes meeting the flight attendant's concerned gaze. She was stunning even in her travel-weary state. Olive skin that glowed despite her exhaustion. Long dark hair that fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and an expressive face that showed every emotion. She wore a simple but elegant navy dress that complemented her photographer's aesthetic, practical yet beautiful. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice carrying a slight Spanish accent that spoke of her Miami upbringing. Before Carlos could respond, a deep voice interrupted from the aisle. "Excuse me, I believe that's my seat." Sofia turned and felt her breath catch in her throat. Standing in the aisle was possibly the most handsome man she had ever seen. Tall and lean with broad shoulders, he had perfectly styled dark hair and eyes the color of stormy seas, a deep blue-gray that seemed to see right through her. He wore an expertly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her camera equipment, and when he smiled, it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "The introduction, Julian Sinclair," he said, extending his hand with an easy confidence. "And you must be the mysterious passenger in my seat." "Sofia Martinez," she replied, taking his hand. The moment their skin touched, she felt an electric current run through her entire body. His hand was warm and strong, and he held hers just a moment longer than necessary. "I'm so sorry. I think I got confused with all the flight changes." Julian studied her face, taking in the natural beauty and the genuine embarrassment in her expression. There was something about her that drew him in immediately. Perhaps it was the way her eyes sparkled with intelligence, or how she bit her lower lip when she was nervous. Whatever it was, he found himself completely captivated. "Don't apologize," he said, his voice warm. "Actually, this might be the best mistake that's happened to me in years. Where were you supposed to be going?" "Barcelona," Sofia said, checking her boarding pass again. "I have a photography assignment there, but with all the storm delays." She gestured helplessly at the confusion. Carlos approached them diplomatically. "Mr. Sinclair, we can certainly resolve this. Miss Martinez, your original flight to Barcelona was canceled due to the storm. The airline has automatically rebooked passengers on alternative routes. In your case, you'll connect through New York." Julian's eyes lit up. "Perfect. Then you're exactly where you need to be." He turned to Carlos. "Is there an empty seat in first class?" "I'd love for Miss Martinez to travel comfortably." "Sir, that would require an upgrade fee," Carlos began. "Put it on my account," Julian said without hesitation. "Consider it an investment in serendipity." the flight as the plane lifted off into the stormy Miami night. Sophia found herself in the window seat next to Julian, still somewhat stunned by the turn of events. The first-class cabin was dimly lit, creating an intimate atmosphere as other passengers settled in for the 3-hour flight to New York. "So," Julian said, turning to face her, "tell me about this photography assignment that's taking you around the world." Sophia's face lit up as she talked about her passion. "I specialize in architectural photography, but not the obvious shots that everyone takes. I look for the hidden details, the way light falls on ancient stones at certain times of day, the shadows that reveal the soul of a building." Julian listened intently, genuinely fascinated. "That sounds incredible. You see the world differently than most people. Photography taught me that there's beauty everywhere if you know how to look for it," Sophia said. "Even in the most ordinary moments, there's something extraordinary waiting to be discovered. Like getting on the wrong flight," Julian said with a smile that made her heart skip. "Exactly like that," she replied, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Julian signaled the flight attendant. "Could we get a bottle of your best champagne, please?" "Sir, we have a 2015 Dom Perignon available in first class," Carlos responded. "Perfect." Julian turned back to Sophia. "We should celebrate accidental adventures." As they waited for the champagne, Sophia studied Julian's profile. There was something magnetic about him, beyond just his obvious good looks. He had an air of confidence and success, but also a warmth that made her feel completely at ease. "What about you?" she asked. "What takes you to New York on a stormy Thursday night?" Julian's expression became more serious. "Business, unfortunately. I run a technology company, Sinclair Industries. We're launching a new platform next month, and I have meetings with investors all weekend." "Technology," Sophia mused. "That must be exciting, creating things that change how people live." "It can be," Julian said, "but sometimes I wonder if I've gotten so caught up in building the future that I've forgotten to live in the present." The champagne arrived, and Julian poured 2 glasses. "2 living in the present," he said, raising his glass. "2 unexpected flights," Sophia countered, touching her glass to his, deepening connection as the plane cruised through the night sky above the Atlantic. Their conversation flowed as smoothly as the champagne. They talked about everything: their dreams, their fears, their families, their travels. Julian told her about growing up in Boston, the pressure of taking over the family business at a young age, and his secret dream of learning to paint. Sophia shared stories of her childhood in Miami, her Cuban grandmother, who taught her to see magic in everyday moments. In her journey from a small local photography studio to international assignments, "I've been to 43 countries," Sophia said, "but I've never met anyone who made me want to stay in one place." Julian's eyes searched her face. "And now? Now I'm wondering what it would be like to see familiar places through someone else's eyes," she said softly. The air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Julian reached over and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sophia, I know this sounds crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to meet you." "It doesn't sound crazy," she whispered. "It sounds like exactly what I've been hoping to hear." Julian's hand cupped her face gently. "May I kiss you?" Instead of answering with words, Sophia leaned toward him, closing the distance between them. When their lips met, it was like coming home and embarking on an adventure. At the same time, the kiss was soft at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as they both gave in to the connection that had been building between them since the moment they met. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "That was," Julian began. "Perfect," Sophia finished. They spent the rest of the flight talking quietly, holding hands, stealing kisses, and marveling at the incredible connection they had found. By the time the plane began its descent into JFK Airport, they both knew that something extraordinary had happened between them. The promises the plane touched down in New York. Reality began to intrude on their magical evening. Sophia would need to catch her connecting flight to Barcelona, and Julian had his business meetings. "I don't want this to end," Julian said as they gathered their belongings. "It doesn't have to," Sophia replied. "Give me your phone," she programmed her number into his contact list, and he did the same with hers. "I'll call you as soon as I land in Barcelona," she promised. "And I'll be counting the minutes until you do," Julian replied. As they walked through the terminal together, neither wanted to be the first to say goodbye. Finally, at the departure gate for Sophia's connecting flight, Julian pulled her into his arms. "This isn't goodbye," he said firmly. "This is just the beginning of our story." "I believe in beginnings," Sophia said, standing on her toes to kiss him one more time. As she walked toward her gate, Julian called out, "Sophia." She turned back to him. "Thank you for taking the wrong flight."
Thank
"You for being in the right seat," she called back, her smile brilliant even from a distance. Neither of them could have imagined that within hours, a simple accident with a cell phone would change everything, setting in motion 3 years of searching, wondering, and dreaming about the love they had found and lost in the space of a single flight. Sophia's heart was still racing from her goodbye with Julian as she settled into her seat on the Barcelona flight. She clutched her phone tightly, already planning the message she would send him once she landed. The 3-hour delay meant she would arrive in Barcelona early morning, but she didn't care about the exhaustion. All she could think about was hearing Julian's voice again. The flight to Barcelona felt endless. Every minute dragged by as Sophia replayed their conversation, their kisses. The way his eyes had looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. She had never believed in love at first sight, but what she felt for Julian was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if she had found a missing piece of herself that she hadn't even known was lost. When the plane finally touched down in Barcelona, Sophia was one of the first passengers off. She made her way through the busy airport, pulling her luggage and camera equipment while trying to compose the perfect message to Julian. She wanted to tell him that she had made it safely, that she couldn't stop thinking about him, that she already missed the sound of his laugh. Outside the airport, early morning Barcelona air was crisp and filled with the promise of a beautiful day. Sophia hailed a taxi to take her to her hotel, eager to freshen up and then call Julian. She climbed into the back seat, placing her phone on the seat beside her as she gave the driver the hotel address. The taxi pulled into traffic, and Sophia watched the beautiful Spanish architecture blur past her window. She was thinking about how she would describe this moment to Julian when the taxi suddenly lurched forward. Another car had run a red light and slammed into their side. The impact wasn't severe, but it was enough to send everything in the taxi flying. Sophia's phone sailed across the back seat and crashed against the opposite window with a sickening crack. When she picked it up, her heart sank. The screen was completely shattered, and when she tried to turn it on, nothing happened. "Okay, señorita?" Taxi driver asked, turning around with concern. "Yes, I'm fine," Sophia said, though she felt anything but fine as she stared at her destroyed phone. "Can you take me to the nearest phone store after the hotel?" The desperate search begins 2 hours later. Sophia sat in a phone repair shop in downtown Barcelona, watching a technician examine her destroyed device. She had already explained the situation 3 times, growing more desperate with each explanation. "I'm sorry, señorita," the technician said with a sympathetic shake of his head. "The internal memory is completely damaged. All your contacts, photos, messages, everything is lost. We cannot recover anything." Sophia felt her world crashing. Down around her, Julian's number was gone. She had no way to reach him, no way to let him know what had happened. She didn't even know his full name beyond Julian Sinclair, information that felt impossibly vague in a city of millions like New York. "Can you help me find a number for someone in New York?" she asked desperately. "If you have their full name and address, perhaps?" the technician said. "But just a name. There could be hundreds of people." Sophia spent the rest of that day calling every Julian Sinclair in New York that she could find through directory assistance. Most didn't answer. Those who did were either the wrong person or had never heard of Sinclair Industries. By evening, she was exhausted and heartbroken. But she refused to give up. Julian's search, meanwhile, in New York, Julian was experiencing his own form of torture. He had been in meetings all day, but his mind kept wandering to Sophia. He checked his phone constantly, waiting for her message that she had arrived safely in Barcelona. As the hours passed without word, his concern grew. By evening, when he still hadn't heard from her, Julian began to worry that something was wrong. He tried calling the number she had given him, but it went straight to a message saying the phone was not in service. His stomach dropped. Had she given him a fake number? Had their entire connection been one-sided? But Julian knew what he had felt between them was real. The way she had looked at him, kissed him, promised to call it had all been genuine. Something must have happened. Julian was not a man who accepted defeat easily. He had built his technology empire by being persistent and resourceful, and he applied the same determination to finding Sophia. He called the airline, but they refused to give him passenger information. He hired a private investigator, but with only a first name and the knowledge that she was a photographer going to Barcelona, there wasn't much to work with. Julian, his business partner and friend, Marcus, told him over dinner a week later, "Maybe you should consider that she might not want to be found." People sometimes have vacation romances and then want to leave them as beautiful memories. This wasn't a vacation romance, Julian said firmly. What we had was real. I know she wanted to see me again, but as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, even Julian began to doubt himself. He threw himself into his work with even more intensity, but nothing seemed to fill the void that Sophia had left in his life. Sophia's professional growth in Barcelona. Sophia completed her photography assignment, but her heart wasn't entirely in it. She captured beautiful images of the city's hidden architectural treasures. But every sunset reminded her of the way Julian's eyes had looked in the airplane's dim lighting. Every couple she saw walking hand in hand made her think of what might have been. She extended her stay in Barcelona for 2 weeks, continuing to search for Julian through every means she could think of. She contacted photography networks, hoping someone might know a Julian Sinclair in New York's business community. She even hired a small Spanish detective agency to help with the search, but they came up empty-handed. When Sophia finally returned to Miami, her best friend in business, partner Emma Rodriguez, could see the change in her immediately. "You look like someone who found the love of her life and then lost him," Emma said as they sat in their photography studio, reviewing Sophia's Barcelona work. "That's exactly what happened," Sophia replied, and told Emma the entire story. Emma, ever practical, tried to help. She used her marketing connections to search social media, business networks, and professional directories. They found several Julian Sinclairs, but none that matched Sophia's description or claimed to run a technology company called Sinclair Industries. "Maybe he lied about his name," Emma suggested gently after months of fruitless searching.
Oh,
Sophia said firmly. "He wasn't that kind of man. Something happened. I know it." 3 years of what-if's time passed. Both Sophia and Julian tried to move on with their lives, but neither could completely let go of that magical night on the plane. 3 years, Sophia's photography career flourished. Her Barcelona series won several international awards, and she began getting assignments from the world's most prestigious travel magazines. She traveled to Iceland, New Zealand, Morocco, and Japan, capturing breathtaking images that earned her a reputation as one of the most talented architectural photographers of her generation. But no matter where she traveled or how successful she became, Sophia found herself comparing every man she met to Julian. She had a few relationships over the 3 years, but none lasted long. How could they, when she was constantly measuring them against the memory of a man who had made her feel like the most important person in the world during a single airplane flight? Julian's experience was remarkably similar. Sinclair Industries went public, making him one of the youngest billionaires in the tech industry. He appeared on magazine covers, gave keynote speeches at major conferences, and was constantly approached by beautiful, successful women. He tried dating, but every relationship felt hollow compared to the connection he had felt with Sophia. About 2 years after that night, Julian began a relationship with Rebecca Knight, a brilliant business strategist who had helped several startups achieve massive success. Rebecca was everything that looked good on paper: intelligent, ambitious, beautiful, and well-connected in his industry. Their relationship developed slowly, built more on mutual respect and shared professional goals than on the kind of instant soul-deep connection Julian had felt with Sophia. Rebecca was stunning in a classical way, with platinum blonde hair always styled perfectly, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, and a wardrobe that spoke of expensive taste and careful attention to image. She was the kind of woman who looked perfect on Julian's arm at charity galas and business dinners. "You know, I care about you," Julian told Rebecca on their 1-year anniversary as they sat in an exclusive Manhattan restaurant. "I care about you too," Rebecca replied, studying his face carefully. "But sometimes I feel like you're holding part of yourself back, like you're comparing me to someone else." Julian shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca was perceptive. It was one of the things that made her so successful in business, but also made it difficult to hide anything from her. "I'm not comparing you to anyone," Julian said, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. Rebecca reached across the table and took his hand. "I know there was someone before me. Someone important. You don't have to tell me about it, but I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm real, and I'm not going anywhere." Julian squeezed her hand, feeling a mixture of gratitude and guilt. Rebecca deserved better than a man who was half living in a memory. But he genuinely cared for her and hoped that time would help him fully commit to their relationship. The photography exhibition, meanwhile, Sophia's career reached new heights when she was invited to have her first solo exhibition at a prestigious gallery in Manhattan. The exhibition, titled Hidden Spaces, Architecture's Secret Language, featured her most stunning work from around the world, the Barcelona series that had started it all, ethereal shots from Japanese temples, dramatic images from Icelandic churches, and intimate portraits of Moroccan courtyards. Emma practically forced Sophia to accept the exhibition opportunity. "You've been avoiding New York for 3 years, Emma pointed out. "That's not healthy. Maybe it's time to face whatever demons you have there." "It's not demons," Sophia said quietly. "It's hope. And hope might be worse." But she knew Emma was right. She couldn't avoid an entire city forever, especially when it could be crucial for her career. The gallery, Morrison Contemporary, was one of the most respected in the art world. Having a solo show there would establish her as a serious artist, not just a commercial photographer. As the opening night approached, Sophia flew to New York with a mixture of excitement and dread. The city held so many memories of that one perfect night, but it also represented 3 years of unanswered questions and impossible dreams. The gallery had transformed her photographs into an immersive experience. Blown up to massive proportions and carefully lit, her images created an almost cathedral-like atmosphere that took visitors on a journey through hidden architectural wonders around the world. "This is incredible," Emma whispered as they walked through the gallery the afternoon before the opening. "Sophia, you've really created something special here." Sophia smiled, feeling a genuine sense of pride and accomplishment. Whatever happened, in her personal life, she had built something meaningful with her art. The guest list surprised. What Sophia didn't know was that Morrison Contemporary had sent invitations to their entire database of collectors and art enthusiasts, including many prominent business leaders in New York. The gallery director, believing that successful entrepreneurs often made excellent art collectors, had specifically targeted tech industry leaders. Among those invitations was one that arrived at the offices of Sinclair Industries. Addressed to Julian Sinclair, CEO. Julian almost threw the invitation away without looking at it. He received dozens of gallery opening invitations every month, and rarely attended. But something made him glance at the details. Hidden spaces, architectures, secret language, a solo exhibition by Sofia Martinez. Julian's heart stopped. Sofia Martinez. Could it possibly be his Sofia? The photographer who had been going to Barcelona for an architecture assignment 3 years ago? His hand shook as he studied the invitation more carefully. The gallery had included one sample image, a stunning photograph of a Barcelona courtyard bathed in golden light. It was exactly the kind of work that the woman he had met would create, finding beauty in hidden corners, revealing the poetry in architectural details. He immediately called the gallery. "Morrison Contemporary. This is Jennifer. This is Julian Sinclair. I received an invitation to your opening tomorrow night. Can you tell me more about the artist, Sofia Martinez?" "She's wonderful," Jennifer gushed. "One of the most talented architectural photographers working today. She's based in Miami, but travels all over the world. This is her first solo exhibition in New York, and we're expecting quite a crowd." Julian's heart was pounding. Miami. Architectural photographer. It had to be her. Will the artist be attending the opening? Of course. She flew in yesterday specifically for the event. Are you planning to attend, Mr. Sinclair? Julian looked at his calendar. He was supposed to have dinner with Rebecca and her parents that night. It's an important step in their relationship that Rebecca had been planning for weeks. Yes, Julian said without hesitation. I'll definitely be there. After hanging up, Julian sat in his office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. After 3 years of searching, of wondering, of building a life that felt incomplete, Sophia was going to be in the same room with him tomorrow night. He had no idea how he was going to explain this to Rebecca, or what he would say to Sophia when he saw her, or whether she would even want to see him. But for the first time in 3 years, Julian felt truly alive. Tomorrow night, everything would change. The Morrison Contemporary Gallery buzzed with the energy of New York's art elite. Sophia stood near her largest photograph, a breathtaking image of morning light filtering through the arches of a Barcelona monastery, accepting congratulations from collectors, critics, and fellow artists. She wore a flowing black dress that seemed to float around her as she moved. Her dark hair swept to one side to reveal elegant silver earrings that caught the gallery's spotlights. Despite the success of the evening, Sophia felt a familiar ache in her chest. Being in New York brought back all the memories she had tried to bury. Every man in a dark suit who passed by the gallery windows made her heart skip, hoping against hope that it might be Julian walking by. Stop looking toward the door every 5 minutes, Emma whispered, appearing at Sophia's side with 2 glasses of champagne. You're supposed to be enjoying your triumph. I am enjoying it, Sophia insisted, though her eyes betrayed her as they drifted toward the entrance once again. It's just hard being here. I know, Emma said gently. But maybe it's time to let that fantasy go. It's been 3 years, Sophia. If he wanted to find you, he would have. Before Sophia could respond, she heard a familiar laugh from across the room. Her blood turned to ice, then fire. She knew that laugh. She had heard it in her dreams for 3 years. She turned slowly, afraid that her mind was playing tricks on her, afraid that it wasn't really him, but even more afraid that it was. Through the crowd of gallery visitors, she saw him. Julian stood near the entrance, and the sight of him took her breath away. He was even more handsome than she remembered, if that was possible. The years had added a maturity to his features that only enhanced his appeal. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that emphasized his tall, lean frame and his dark hair. Had just a few silver threads at the temples that made him look distinguished. But he wasn't alone. Rebecca's territory beside Julian stood. A woman who looked like she had stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. Tall and statuesque with platinum blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. She wore a stunning red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hand rested possessively on Julian's arm, and she surveyed the gallery with the calculating gaze of someone who was used to being the most important person in any room. Julian, darling, the woman was saying in a voice that carried just far. Enough for Sophia to hear. Remind me again what drew you to this particular exhibition? Architecture photography isn't usually your thing. Sophia's heart sank as she realized this must be Julian's girlfriend. Of course he had moved on. Of course he had found someone sophisticated and beautiful who fit perfectly into his world of business dinners and charity galas. Julian hadn't answered his companion's question because he was scanning the room, clearly looking for someone. When his eyes finally found Sophia across the crowded gallery, the world seemed to stop spinning. Their eyes locked and 3 years of separation collapsed in an instant. The chemistry, the connection, the overwhelming sense of recognition. It was all still there, as powerful as it had been on that airplane. Julian's face went through a series of emotions in rapid succession. Shock, joy, longing, and something that looked almost like pain. The confrontation, Julian, the blonde woman said sharply, following his gaze across the room to where Sophia stood frozen. Julian, are you listening to me? What? Julian turned back to her, clearly struggling to focus. Sorry, Rebecca. Were you saying? Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she studied the woman who had captured her boyfriend's complete attention. She was a smart woman who had built her career on reading people and situations, and she immediately recognized the look that had passed between Julian and the dark-haired beauty across the room. Who is she? Rebecca asked, her voice deceptively calm. Who is who? Julian asked, but he couldn't help glancing back at Sophia. The photographer, Rebecca said coldly. The one you've been staring at since we walked in. Julian opened his mouth to lie, to deflect, to protect both himself and Rebecca from the complicated truth. But before he could speak, Sophia began walking toward them. She moved through the crowd with unconscious grace, her dark eyes never leaving Julian's face. Emma grabbed Sophia's arm. What are you doing? Something I should have done 3 years ago, Sophia replied, gently pulling free from her friend's grasp. As Sophia approached, Julian felt his heart hammering against his ribs. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. The 3 years had refined her beauty, adding depth and confidence that made her absolutely radiant. When she stopped in front of them, the air seemed to crackle with electricity. "Hello, Julian," Sophia said softly, her voice carrying just a hint of her Miami accent. Sophia, Julian replied, and her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. Rebecca watched this exchange with growing fury. She was not a woman who tolerated being ignored, and the way Julian was looking at this photographer made it clear that there was history between them. Well, Rebecca said, stepping slightly in front of Julian, "Aren't you going to introduce us, darling?" Julian seemed to shake himself out of his trance. "Rebecca Knight, this is Sophia Martinez, the artist." "This is Rebecca." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Sophia said politely, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming to my exhibition." Rebecca shook her hand briefly, her grip just a little too firm. "Your work is quite interesting," she said in a tone that suggested she found it anything but. "Julian was just telling me how much he wanted to see this particular show, though I'm surprised he didn't mention that he knew you personally." The tension between the three of them was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other gallery visitors were beginning to notice the drama unfolding near Sophia's most prominent piece. "The private conversation, Rebecca," Julian said carefully. "Could you give me a moment to speak with Sophia about her work? Professional curiosity?" Rebecca's smile could have frozen champagne. "Of course, darling. I'll just go mingle with the other collectors." She leaned in to kiss Julian's cheek, marking her territory one final time before gliding away toward a group of art dealers. The moment Rebecca was out of earshot, Julian and Sophia looked at each other with a mixture of longing and uncertainty. "Look incredible," Julian said softly. "So do you," Sophia replied. 3 years have been good to you, have they?" Julian asked. "Because they felt like the longest 3 years of my life." Sophia's breath caught. "Julian, I tried to call you. My phone was destroyed in an accident the morning I landed in Barcelona. I lost your number and I couldn't find you. I searched for months." "I searched for you too," Julian said, stepping closer. "I hired investigators, called every photographer in Miami, even flew to Barcelona twice hoping I might run into you. I was beginning to think I had dreamed the whole thing." They were standing close enough now that Sophia could smell his cologne, the same scent that had driven her crazy on the airplane. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his blue-gray eyes. "We need to talk," Julian said. "Properly, not here." Sophia glanced around the gallery, aware that they were being watched by both Emma and Rebecca, as well as several curious gallery visitors. "There's a private office upstairs," she said. "Ooh." "The gallery director said I could use it if I needed." Quiet moment. Without another word, Julian followed her through the crowd and up a narrow staircase to the gallery's administrative floor. The office was small and cluttered with art books and exhibition catalogs, but it felt private and safe compared to the chaos downstairs. The moment the door closed behind them, as the careful politeness disappeared, "The truth revealed God," Sophia, Julian said, running his hands through his hair. "I can't believe you're real. I can't believe you're here. I've thought about that night every single day for 3 years, Sophia admitted. "I kept wondering if maybe I had imagined how strong the connection was between us." "You didn't imagine it," Julian said firmly. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself. "I have to tell you something. Rebecca and I have been together for 2 years. She's a good person, and she doesn't deserve to be hurt." "I know," Sophia said quietly, "and I'm not here to complicate your life. I have my own life now, my own career. I needed to see you. To know that you were okay?" Julian laughed bitterly. "Okay?" "Sophia, I've spent 3 years building a successful company, making money, dating a woman who's perfect on paper, and feeling like I was sleepwalking through my own life. The only time I felt truly awake was during those few hours with you, Julian." Sophia started. "No, let me finish," he said. "I know it's crazy. I know people don't fall in love during a single flight. I know that what I'm feeling doesn't make sense. But seeing you tonight, it's like someone turned the lights back on in my life." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. "It's not crazy. I feel the same way. But you have a girlfriend, Julian. Beautiful, successful girlfriend, who obviously cares about you. I care about her too, Julian said. But caring about someone and being in love with them are two different things. I've never felt for Rebecca even a fraction of what I felt for you that first night. The air between them was charged with 3 years of longing and unresolved feelings. Julian took another step toward her, and this time he didn't stop. Adele! Me, you feel it too, he said softly. Tell me I'm not crazy. You're not crazy, Sophia whispered. Julian reached up to cup her face in his hands, just as he had on the airplane 3 years before. I never forgot the taste of your lips, he murmured. Julian, we can't, Sophia said weakly, even as she leaned into his touch. Why not? He asked. Why can't we have a second chance at what we lost? Before Sophia could answer, he kissed her. The moment their lips met, 3 years of separation and heartache melted away. The kiss was gentle at first, then desperate, as if they were both trying to make up for all the time they had lost. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. I have to break up with Rebecca, Julian said. I can't keep pretending that what I have with her is enough when I know what it feels like to love someone completely. Are you sure? Sophia asked. Because if we do this, there's no going back. I'm not someone you can have a casual relationship with, Julian. When I love someone, I love them with everything I have. I'm sure, Julian said without hesitation. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The decision downstairs, Rebecca was growing increasingly impatient. She had spent the last 20 minutes making polite conversation with art collectors while keeping one eye on the staircase, waiting for Julian to return. When another 5 minutes passed without any sign of him, her patience finally snapped. She made her way upstairs, following the sound of quiet voices to a partially open office door. What she saw when she peered inside made her blood boil. Julian and Sophia were standing close together, holding hands and looking at each other with an intimacy that made Rebecca feel physically sick. She pushed the door open without knocking. She said coldly, "This is cozy." Julian and Sophia sprang apart, but the damage was done. Rebecca had seen enough to confirm her worst suspicions. Rebecca, Julian started, but she held up a hand. To stop him, don't, she said. Just don't. I've been waiting downstairs for half an hour while you've been up here with her. I'm not stupid, Julian. I can see what's happening here. Rebecca turned to Sophia with undisguised hatred. I don't know who you think you are, but Julian and I have been building a life together for 2 years. We live together. We're partners in business as well as personally. And I'm not going to let some random photographer destroy that because you had some holiday fling years ago. Rebecca, it wasn't like that, Julian said firmly. And what Sophia and I have isn't a fling? Then what is it? Rebecca demanded. Because 2 hours ago, you were my boyfriend. 2 hours ago, you were telling me you cared about me. Julian took a deep breath. I do care about you, Rebecca. But I'm not in love with you. I never have been, and you deserve better than that. The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. You're breaking up with me? For her? I'm ending our relationship because it's the right thing to do for both of us, Julian said. You deserve to be with someone who loves you completely, and I deserve a chance to be with the woman I've never been able to forget. Rebecca stared at Julian for a long moment, then turned her furious gaze to Sophia. You have no idea what you're destroying, she said. We had plans, dreams, a future together. I'm sorry, Sophia said genuinely. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, but you're not sorry enough to walk away, Rebecca observed bitterly. Sophia met her gaze steadily. No, I'm not. Rebecca let out a harsh laugh. At least you're honest. She turned back to Julian. I hope she's worth throwing away everything we built together. She is, Julian said simply. Rebecca nodded once, as if Julian had confirmed something she already knew. Then I guess there's nothing left to say. I'll have my things out of the apartment by tomorrow. She walked to the door, then paused. You know what's funny, Julian? I always knew there was someone else. I could see it in your eyes sometimes, especially when you thought I wasn't looking. I told myself I could make you forget her. The time and consistency would win over whatever fantasy you were holding on to. I guess I was wrong. With that, she was gone, leaving Julian and Sophia alone in the sudden silence. Are you okay? Sophia asked softly. Julian nodded. I feel terrible for hurting her, but I also feel free. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can breathe properly. He turned to face Sophia fully. So what happens now? Sophia smiled, the first genuine smile Julian had seen from her all evening. Now we find out if what we remember from that airplane is real, or if it was just the magic of the moment. And if it's real? Julian asked. If it's real, Sophia said, stepping into his arms, then we get to write the rest of our story together. Julian pulled her close and kissed her again, and this time there were no obstacles, no guilt, no barriers between them. Just the woman he had fallen in love with 3 years ago, and the promise of all the tomorrows they would share. 6 months later, Sophia adjusted her camera settings as the morning light filtered through the windows of Julian's Manhattan penthouse. She was preparing for a new photography series about urban architecture. But this morning, she was distracted by the man making coffee in the kitchen. Julian had convinced her to move to New York 3 months earlier, and she had established a satellite office for her photography business. Emma had taken over the Miami operations, though she visited New York frequently to help coordinate Sophia's international assignments. The light is perfect right now, Julian said, appearing with 2 cups of coffee and nodding toward the city skyline visible through their floor-to-ceiling windows. I know, Sophia said, accepting her coffee and leaning into his embrace. But I'm shooting something even more beautiful. She had been photographing their life together, quiet moments over morning coffee. Julian working at his computer with the city spread out behind him, their hands intertwined as they walked through Central Park. It was a departure from her usual architectural work. But these intimate images captured something she had never been able to photograph before. Complete happiness. For you, Julian said, setting down his coffee cup and reaching into his pocket. Sophia's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. Julian, I know it's only been 6 months since we found each other again, he said, dropping to one knee beside their breakfast table. But I also know that I've been looking for you my whole life, and I don't want to waste another moment. He opened the box to reveal a stunning vintage ring with a centered diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the morning light like stars. Sophia Martinez, Julian said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Will you marry me? Sophia felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at the man who had changed her life twice, once on an airplane and again in an art gallery. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, absolutely yes. As Julian slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Sophia thought about the chain of seemingly random events that had brought them to this moment. A storm in Miami, a wrong flight, a broken phone, 3 years of searching, an art exhibition that brought them back together. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gotten on the wrong flight that night? She asked, as they held each other in the golden morning light. Julian smiled and kissed her forehead. No, he said, because I believe that somehow, some way, we would have found each other anyway. Some people are just meant to be together. Outside their window, New York City hummed with the energy of 8 million people pursuing their dreams, taking chances and occasionally stumbling into the kind of love that changes everything. And in the penthouse, overlooking it all, a photographer and a billionaire who had found each other against all odds began planning the rest of their extraordinary, ordinary, perfect life together. Their story had begun with a mistake that turned out to be destiny. It continued with a love that survived years of separation. And it would go on, Julian and Sophia knew, as long as they both drew breath. After all, the best stories never really end. Ow. They just keep getting better.